Win-win partnerships are the center of a forum taking place in Kenya's capital, Nairobi. The EU-Africa Business Summit, which has brought together more than 250 business leaders and government officials from Africa and Europe, hopes to offer an unrivaled opportunity for businesses to share their views so as to better defend the interests of their sectors.
The forum had two objectives. First, to review progress that is being made in terms of encouraging investment flows between Europe and Africa, and also looking at the second one, specific sectors that lend themselves to businesses for them to be able to participate in. And in that context, identify obstacles that hinder investment in those areas and bring them to the knowledge of the public sector and decision makers to be able to remove those obstacles.
It is basically a forum where dialogue is established between the European Union actors and the African Union actors and the private sector. So it's an opportunity to listen to the private sector, an opportunity for the private sector to put forward ideas and recommendations for private sector development and how private sector can also help in the development of Africa. And it's also an opportunity to try to set up or establish a number of priorities of action for the future.
The forum is an integral part of the EU strategy for Africa and intends to play a key role in bringing together entrepreneurs and public and private investors from both Europe and Africa in order to discuss ways of improving the investment and business climate and to raise the profile of doing business in Africa.
We have what we call the National Indicative Program, where each country is allocated 200 to 300 million. And the difference between the EU funding and other donors is that this is grant money. It is not paid back. So it is there to contribute to development. Let me just give you a typical example. If you look at the Northern Corridor, beyond Nairobi to the border with Uganda, the rehabilitation of that highway has been done thanks to the funding by the European Union. But we're also working on energy, for instance. There is funding for the East African Power Pool, with a specialized agency of commerce. As you know, we've got energy, shortages. So these are the typical examples. But in addition to that, at the regional level, we have 78 million euros from the European Union to support our trade liberalization process, including the implementation of the common external tariff.
The forum came to the conclusion that some modest progress has been made in a number of areas, in ICT, in infrastructure, just as examples, but also recognized that a lot more needs to be done. For example, in the area of ICT, there is a growing partnership between private and public. We can see opportunities that are unfolding, and you being here in Kenya know, for instance, what is happening in the area of broadband and the rest, that the public sector and private sector are working together very closely.
Although global foreign direct investment declined by 20% in 2008, flows to Africa have remained resilient, growing 16.8% to $61.9 billion over the course of last year. Expectations are high that this will see a higher growth rate for Africa.
The EU is the largest grant donor, and we have been involved in the development and support to Africa development for over 50 years. Over the last years, we have developed jointly with the African Union what we call the joint strategy Europe-Africa, and that strategy is developed through a number of partnerships that have been established. There are 8 in total, and a number of them relate with business and business activities.
Africa has already been affected there are some countries, for instance, if you look at the export performance, whether it is copper, diamond, or coffee, whatever it is, Africa has had a huge reduction in export. In fact, if you look at flour export from Kenya, there is already a reduction I don't know by how much, but to extent of sometimes 20% plus. Now, the same has also happened in the area of remittances. The same has happened in the area of tourism. The same has happened in the area of foreign direct investment. So Africa has been affected for sure, but it depends from country to country. You cannot generalize. Some countries much worse than others. In fact, some of the countries in Africa, namely Botswana, for the first time Botswana has had to go out to look for loan, a country that has always been self-sufficient in terms of resources, which was operating on a surplus budget because there were no sales of diamond. So that has been a major impact to Africa.
Participants are keen to develop closer business ties between African states and the European Union countries, a market which the continent has yet to fully tap into.